Hi, I'm Charlotte, and this is the Late Late Podcast. In this week's episode, I discuss how James Corden was selected for the role of the next Late Late Show host. I don't think I even really need to go into as much detail on the fact that this is an extremely hard role to land. There is no set resume needed, you can't apply for it. It's probably a lot easier to become an astronaut and work for NASA than it is to become a late night television show host on a major network. If you look at the previous jobs held by late night show hosts in the past 20 odd years, most of them have come from either being a writer in the comedy world or being a performer in the sketch or improvisation comedy world. Whereas you look at James, he comes from a world of writing because he wrote his own sitcom with Ruth Jones called Gavin and Stacey, whilst also starring in it, plus a lot of theatre, starring in multiple award-winning plays, which is a obviously slight change to his late night colleagues. So if you're wondering how this all started, let's get into it. On April 3rd, 2014, David Letterman told his studio audience that he has informed CBS president Les Moonves that he will retire in 2015. Exactly 1 week later, CBS announced the new host of The Late Show on CBS, Stephen Colbert. So the current Late Late host, Craig Ferguson, had a clause in his contract that he would be guaranteed a significant yet undisclosed payout if he was not chosen to be the successor of The Late Show with David Letterman. I say undisclosed, it is rumoured that it was $8.5 million. Again, that's allegedly. Although Ferguson said to Vanity Fair that he felt like he was done at that point and he had wanted to leave before it became like a chore to him to do the job. And 10 years in a job is a very long time, especially if that job is so demanding creatively. He just said there was no drama or malice with CBS, no standoff. He just felt like it was the right time to take the next step. Craig Ferguson announced his departure from The Late Late Show on the 28th of April 2014. Now, there were rumoured to be a few people in the running to host The Late Late Show and take over from Craig Ferguson. One of these included Neil Patrick Harris, which is really fascinating because him and James literally just worked together on a Broadway play late last year. Neil was scouted as an early favourite due to his successful hosting gigs with the Tonys and the Emmy Awards. He also had a very broad appeal, mainly due to his successful character Barney on the show How I Met Your Mother. It was said that Neil Patrick Harris decided to focus on other projects instead of investing in this role. Another rumoured name to be in the running was Chelsea Handler, who had her own talk show on the network E and was in the middle of leaving that network. And lastly, Josh Gad, who people would probably know as from the voice of Olaf in Frozen. Many New Yorkers and theatre people would know him as originating the role of Elder Cunningham in The Book of Mormon on Broadway. It was rumoured that he tested internally for this role. Now, whilst James had done theatre before, and The History Boys was a huge milestone in his career that really took him to the next level professionally, it was One Man, Two Governors that really changed the trajectory of his life and career. James had performed in the production One Man, Two Governors in London, and it was wildly successful that it ended up transferring to Broadway in New York City. Now, James was nominated and won his first Tony Award for a lead actor in a play, beating out some huge names like James Earl Jones, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and John Lithgow, and absolutely star-studded nominee pool. I'm really hoping that James wins his second Tony for his performance as Ivan in Art on Broadway late last year. If you haven't seen James on stage, you're really missing out. I did read somebody say online that he's probably Broadway's most best-kept secret, and it's so true, because I feel like where he's meant to be is on the stage, and it's such a privilege to watch James perform in theatre. And now I'm getting sidetracked, but James had mentioned before in many interviews that his life feels like it's split into two: life before One Man, Two Governors and life after One Man, Two Governors. And it was this exact show where a few of the executives from CBS had seen James perform, and they had a glimmer of light in their minds, starting to turn the clogs, thinking that James should be on network television one way or the other. So let's wind it back a little bit to this meeting that James had with some CBS executives. In this meeting, James brought up to the executives that he thought Stephen Colbert was a great replacement for David Letterman. This information had just become public quite recently, so it was very topical. He said that he thought the way that it had been handled was great because we've seen a lot in the past how people have been undercut for roles, things haven't really worked out. There had been a lot of, trust issues in the world of late night, and people aren't happy with the way things are handled. So James goes on to say that he thought it was handled very well and it's going to be a very smooth transition. And he asked, well, what are you guys planning on doing with that 12:30 a.m. slot? Because, again, it had just become public knowledge that Craig Ferguson was leaving. The executives, Les Moonves and Nina Tasler, had said, well, we hadn't really thought too much about that position yet because we had just been obviously so busy with replacing David Letterman with Stephen Colbert. And James goes on to say, I think that 12:30 a.m. slot can be made into a really great show, whatever avenue they take it, but it should be so different to Stephen Colbert, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, which are all different shows in their own way anyway. James talks about how this was such an off-the-cuff conversation in their much bigger and broader meeting about a sitcom, that not long after, James's agent had called him and said that he'd been offered the job as the late-night television show host for The Late Late Show at the 12:30 a.m. slot on CBS. Obviously, this job doesn't come around often. As I mentioned, you can't just apply for it with a resume, especially someone from another country. But James had mentioned he didn't even know what the shows were as a kid, as YouTube didn't really exist back then. There's no way to come across a viral clip from David Letterman's top 10 list. It was never on British TV. James Corden's immediate answer to taking over the role was no. He loved his career as an actor. This was an opportunity that just came out of left field, and it was on the other side of the world. But the offer didn't disappear. It kept coming back around, and the more he thought about it, the more his perspective started to shift. James's second child and first daughter, Carrie, was born 9.5 weeks into the wood press junket started, and he said he was intermittently away for the first 5 or so weeks of her life because of this. A gig like The Late Late Show would give him the chance to be creative every single day and come home and be with his family at the end of the day and be a consistent, present father and husband, which is really not exactly the case when you are filming a movie. You have to travel a lot for the press junkets afterwards. There's a lot of overnights and away trips. Obviously, the biggest thing here is moving to another country with a young family. It's a roughly 11 to 12 hour flight from Los Angeles to London. But again, this offer doesn't come up all the time. James obviously consulted a lot of people in his life about this big move and if he should do it. And he met up with one of his best friends, Ben Winston, for lunch. And he said he'd been offered The Late Late Show and he's really considering taking it. Ben has been quoted to go on to say that I think it's one of the worst decisions I've ever heard in my life, because he was taking into consideration how much James had done at that point in his life. Again, his career was really taking off. He was very well known in Britain as an actor, as a theatre performer. Ben thought, why on earth would he want to go and interview people every single night? James explained to Ben that they would have a blank piece of paper to make an hour's worth of network television every single night. And something Ben had noticed on his chat with James, instead of saying I, James was saying we. He wanted Ben to join him on this crazy adventure to America. Now, personally, I think Ben Winston is one of the most underrated underdogs in not only Hollywood, but the global entertainment industry. I promise you, if you have never heard of him before, you would be familiar with the work he has done. This literally includes pretty much all of One Direction's music videos. He is the executive producer of The Kardashians, the one that went to Hulu. Most recently, he executive produced the Grammy Awards, as well as Harry Styles' One Night Only in Manchester on Netflix, and he is set to be the executive producer of the upcoming LA Olympics opening ceremony, which is, that's just crazy. Also, another crazy fact is in Harry Styles' song, As It Was, that little girl's voice at the start that says, "Come on, Harry, we want to say goodnight to you," That's Ben Winston's daughter. So apparently she used to call Harry like every night before she goes to bed to like talk about her day, and he didn't pick up, and that was like the voice message left. So again, he is a very influential person in the entertainment industry. I honestly could do like a multi-part episode on just Ben Winston himself. Like, I'm honestly so fascinated by him. So on September 8th, 2014, CBS officially announced James Corden as the new host of The Late Late Show. His debut episode was originally meant to be the 9th of March 2015. However, CBS pushed that back to the 23rd of March 2015 to take advantage of the promotion for the NCAA basketball tournament, which I have a feeling James would have had no idea what that was about. Now, in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about the build-up to The Late Late Show. What happened with James prior to that? Obviously, he had a lot of press junkets going on, promotions for the show. There were rumours swirling about it before he was officially announced. So there's quite a bit to get through on that. So this is kind of like a part 2 to this episode, but it's just about the entire build-up to get there. And also the world's initial thoughts on a British actor taking over the role as a Late Late Show host, which is kind of very rare in this day and age. If you don't already, make sure you follow this podcast and give it a likes up, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram at The Late Late Podcast. Send me a DM, any questions you have. I'm kind of recording a couple of these in bulk at the moment, so I'm hoping if any questions come through, I can kind of gather them all together and answer them in one go. But again, don't forget to follow me, message me if you want. I always love hearing from fans of the show and if you have any experiences. So thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.